They hate when you elevate. You're stacking up losses, I'm handing them out, yeah, I had to go delegate. It feel like I'm floating, I'm lost in the moment, that's why I can levitate.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devan, and today we got a special guest for you. We got Jeremy Johnston on the podcast, and I wanted to bring him on today. You know, I met him through social media and through just networking, as you know, some of our other guests. But his story of being a serial entrepreneur and having to scale and having to go through the pandemic is one that many have faced and many that will face it. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for hopping on the podcast today.
Hey, Devan, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on. It's been great to watch you on social media and everything. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, let's dive straight into it. How did you get started in the entrepreneurial space?
Yeah, so I came from the corporate world where I actually worked for entrepreneurs for the last several years. A couple of different companies that were owned by guys who started companies and scaled them up. One of them they actually sold to a Chinese-based company, and so that was definitely a eye opener. And that was kind of when I decided I needed to change it up. In 2017, my dad passed away and left me a little bit of money. And rather than being, the people that everybody talk about of like getting a little bit of money and getting a truck, and then 4 years later having nothing but a older truck sitting out in the driveway, I decided I wanted to use that to try to invest and buy some assets. So I started looking for my first company to purchase. I went out and started talking to different people, actually got a job where I was going to become an investor, and that fell through. So went on bizbuysell.com, the worst possible way to buy a business, and found a flooring store to buy. And in February of 2020, closed on that first business and got started.
Okay. Well, that's a different take than a lot of entrepreneurs, go, right? It's some people that when they're like, I want to be an entrepreneur, they want to start from the ground up. You took a different approach and you're like, look, I don't want to start from the ground up. Like, you were lucky enough to have, some extra money, that floated your way. And it was like, okay, well, let's take that route. What made you think of buying a business versus, starting a business?
It was really, my wife and I, and we had one kid at the time, and we're planning on having a second kid. We were used to a certain lifestyle, right? I was making six figures, in my corporate job. And so scaling back and going at it from the route of starting something small and growing it was a little bit scary. And so, rather than doing that, I decided that I wanted to see what might be out there. After I purchased my business, I bought a book called Buy Then Build, which had some interesting statistics. Most small businesses fail, within the first 5 years, right? Businesses that are purchased by the SBA have a failure rate over a 10-year span of 3%. So that told me after I made the decision and I saw that I was probably on the right track. But I figured that if the business that I bought was being run by a 78-year-old woman who was living 500 miles away and running it remotely, and I figured that if she was able to do it and do it successfully and cash flow it, that surely I would be able to do it. Of course, the world kicked me in the teeth 30 days after I closed on my business with COVID shutdown. And basically the business going away for much of 2020, but definitely rebounded quickly in 21 and 20 after that.
So when you acquired the business, were you still working your corporate job? Are you still working your corporate job? And how did that transition happen?
Yeah, so as I was going through it and going through the process, which takes a really long time, probably 12 months or so, as we got to the end of it and we kept saying, oh, we're getting ready to close, oh, we're getting ready to close, I got ready to walk away from that corporate job. And at that point, I was really working for another smaller entrepreneur, the one that was that we were supposed to partner together and doing an acquisition. And so I kept kicking the can down the road and like anybody, there was a annual Christmas bonus that was luring out there. So as soon as that hit the bank account, I went to the owner and said, look, I have this opportunity. We said we were going to do acquisitions. It's been a year and a half that didn't happen. So went and looked on my own and found something and gave him that notice. And so I was without a job for about a month in between the two. Yeah, so I didn't, I basically cut ties and jumped right in, and have been doing that ever since, and made another acquisition since then as well.
Well, no, that's awesome. With the business that you acquired, is it in the same industry that you were working before? Were you only looking for businesses in that industry?
No, it's not. So I was in call centers before. So my corporate job, I was in outsourced customer service for companies like Airbnb, Mutual of Omaha, large companies. Went to work for a LED gas price sign manufacturer in between, running their post sales, and then jumped into the flooring business. So the business I bought in flooring had nothing to do with anything else, but everything's a people business, right? It's all about relationships. It's all about making people feel like they're worth something and that they're being seen for who they are. So I figured that I would be able to learn it. I was an architecture major for a little while in college and really liked it. And I always liked working around the house. So I decided to buy a flooring company. And COVID was a blessing in disguise in that, I sent all my employees home. And I did everything except for the installation. So I went out to the customers' homes and did the measurements. I cut the carpet. I did, and made a lot of mistakes, for over the course of about 4 or 5 months. But it allowed me to learn the business very quickly, and it allowed for my team to see that I was willing to dig in and do what I needed to do to make the business work.
No, that's awesome. I mean, especially jumping into something that you've had a little bit of knowledge, whether it's just self-taught or back when you were in college, and diving in, because that learning curve is already scary enough, right? When you start a business, let alone buy a business that's already operating, and if it's not something that you were transitioning from, there's obviously that learning curve, but you burn the boats, and I'm gonna figure it out. That's amazing. So
Yeah.
what was that next step for you? You said, you've acquired some other businesses. What was that next step, for you?
Yeah, so when I purchased Creative, the first acquisition, about 65% of that business was all Red Roof In. So we sell flooring to Red Roof Ins nationwide. And I knew very quickly that if I didn't de-risk on that point, right, that there was going to be a huge inflection based on that. And also had a little bit of the shiny object syndrome of like getting a little bit ahead of myself, I think, and seeing what else is out there. And I found another flooring store located about an hour away on the other side of Columbus, Ohio. So I have a store on each side of Columbus outside of the metro. And just so happened that Intel had announced that they were putting $30 billion into a chip fab plant 20 miles away from there as well. And so decided to take a risk and try to make the acquisition. Again, went biz buy sell, not the smartest way to do it, but I probably overpaid for both my stores. With my second acquisition, 110 storage units came with that as well. And then the real estate on both of the properties was included. So, but that store was about twice the size of my first store. So it took that 65% red roof risk and made it 15. So it significantly reduced that overall risk.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, that's a smart move, especially when you see that if you have one vendor that is basically your golden handcuff, kind of, it
Yeah.
can be kind of scary. Then you're almost like just doing anything that they ask just so you don't lose that. So I mean, that's awesome. You were able to dilute that risk by expanding. Is that with the storage units and stuff you said it came with, is that a separate business, or is that part of that second building?
Yeah, it's a separate LLC. So it shares about 50% of so it's about 3 acres, and about an acre and a half of it is the storage units. And my employees in the carpet store and the flooring store help those customers. So I made that acquisition about a year ago, and in February we finally automated a majority of that. So now those customers can sign up, pay, everything online. The system actually will lock them out, et cetera. So it takes a little bit of the work away from my team as well.
No, that's awesome. Honestly, I was actually talking to my wife, like the storage unit business, like it's not as like sexy of a business, but it's awesome. Like my parents growing up always had like an RV, like for our dirt bikes and stuff like that. And we would pay for, RV parking, and it wasn't even anything crazy. It wasn't even the storage units. It was a
Right.
dirt lot with, spray painted lines that were paying hundreds of dollars to leave us the RV there. And I was like, this is a crazy business model.
It is. And, a year ago, when I purchased them, I'm like, man, the rates that they were charging customers were like really like 50% below market. And so as we made changes and investments, and automated, we raised the rents by $20 across the board. And we're still 30% below market, right? So and just that $20 increase is an extra $2,000 a month of just income. So
No, it's crazy, those small like micro changes to each individual customer, what kind of change it can have on a business owner, right?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so let's actually dive into that real quick. Like, what have you noticed with your businesses, right? Because you're acquiring businesses. When you're looking for those changes, whether it's expenses, whether it's sales, like how do you evaluate that, or try to increase your margins essentially from what is previously done?
Yeah, I mean, I don't push it too much, right? So I first try to figure out how we can add more value
Mhm.
into the equation. And once we figure out how we can find more value into the equation, then we can start working on margin. The biggest thing that I like to do, especially on the flooring side, is I want to be something to someone, not a little bit to everybody, right? So the relationship aspect with my partners, I really want to make sure is there, so that they're willing to help drive down some of the cost, and we can get some of the efficiencies out of the system in order to find margin gains in that perspective. The last thing I really like to do is to go out and just raise prices or cut costs without really thinking through where the value is being added to the situation.
No,
Um,
that definitely makes sense though. I mean, I think that the value add itself, it may not increase the per sale margin, but it can increase just organically increase the volume of sales, which is going to increase, revenue. And obviously, even if the margins are the same, you're going to have an increase in business, right?
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, the second store I purchased actually changed hands 18 months before I bought it. So a guy came in and bought it for 18 months and then sold it to me. He actually made a little bit of money on the deal, but he didn't invest in the relationships. So when I came in, my first thing was, okay, let's talk to all of our customers, all of our repeat customers, business connections within the community, et cetera. And very quickly, we were able to reestablish some of our relationships with some senior living facilities, some multifamily facilities that had gone away. And we were able to bring that business back, and that's just recurring revenue. The relationship is there. We haven't changed any of the pricing. We didn't change any of the strategy around how we price things, but we reestablished that relationship. And since that time, that customer has brought in several $100,000 worth of business for us.
Wow, that's awesome. So let's go into, you mentioned relationships with buying a business, right? And being a new owner of a business, right? I'm sure that you've maintained a good amount of the staff, the original staff, right? And so how did that transition go? Because it can almost be like, at least in my thought, it might be a weird, like awkward position being a new owner with a team that's already been there. So how was that transition, and how'd you handle that?
So we're going to talk about it in the two different stores. So the first store, when I walked in, there were basically two employees. So an office manager and a warehouse guy. They're both still with me today, as well as the majority of our installers. And then we've brought back one employee in a part-time manner to help with measurements and so forth. The other store had 6 employees when I purchased it a year ago. At the end of July, only one of those will be remaining. So it's been a crazy turnover aspect. 2 of those have retired, and then 2 of them actually found other opportunities. One that went on to have an expanded role using their degree, and then one who had a disagreement with another employee and just walked out. And then I let one employee go for not living up to our values. We gave them all the opportunities to live up to the values, and when they don't, I even held on too long, and then once I finally pulled the trigger, for basically not being able to work together as a team and support one another, everybody on the team was like, "Man, what took you so long?" Like even their families were like, one of my employees' moms came in and was like, "What took you so long?" So it's a balancing act, but the biggest thing is you've got to come from it, from my perspective of taking care of one another, right? My values are, one of them is growth. I want everybody to grow personally, professionally, spiritually, in every manner possible. I feel like it's my responsibility as a business owner to take care of my team. So I pay for 100% of my employees' healthcare, and they all have 401k. They all have life insurance. That's all supported by the company. Because I feel like if I can take those things off of their plate, then they don't have to think about those things. They don't have to worry about those things, and they can just come into work and do their job.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I completely agree with you. And, if someone's not living up to the core values, you hire by them, you fire by them. But how it must have been a mental battle with the other staff you have, leaving or giving notice. And then now all of a sudden you're going from 6 to 1, and you're like, man, like that, I kind of need the help. Am I gonna,
Yeah. I should say 6 to 1 is how many were there originally to how many of the original are still there today. We
Oh,
still have
okay.
we still have 6 or 7 employees, so we've added additional team players, but it was a struggle for me because one of my mentalities was going from being a victim to a victor. I want to help everybody through that transition, and so I want to help everybody be able to find their spot, and I want to give everybody as many chances as I can to develop them. And when I can, I feel like a failure. So a year ago, my mentality was, I'm never going to fire anybody. I'm always gonna, I'm gonna always give everybody a chance, and I'm gonna do everything I can to keep them. And then this year, in 3.5 months, I fired 2 employees, and both of them were because due to attendance issues and not being able to live up to showing up together to win together. And ultimately, the conversations had to take place, and I'd like to think that they're probably found better opportunities that suit what they need for their families.
I mean, as a business owner, we never want to be the bad guy. It's not in our intent to, you know, put someone out of a job or anything like that. 'Cause it's not fun. It's not fun firing someone, right?
Yeah.
I've had to do it before, and it sucks. It's hard in, on both sides. But at the same time, like you said, with even the family members, like the mom coming in and saying, "What took so long?" It's like sometimes you have to cut the finger to save the hand, or
Yes.
else you're letting it go, and all of a sudden that can snowball into a lot more headaches for you down the road, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So I want to dive in. I mean, because you're at the stage, with owning now multiple businesses that you've acquired, right? And you're in basically the game. Yes, you're running these businesses, but you're in the game of acquisition as well, right? And that's kind of like the end goal of any like entrepreneur that's at scale, right?
Yep.
Is being a serial entrepreneur, but into acquisition. So I know you've mentioned that you went on to like biz buy sell and gone that route, but for you, what do you look for in a company, or what do you look for in a business that you're looking to buy?
So it's changed. And, I was looking earlier this year at a third location, a third flooring store to acquire. And actually, one of my general managers came to me and she goes, "Stop." She said, "Stop for a second and let's build a base camp. Basically, let's get our processes in place. Let's all get on the same CRMs. Let's all get this stuff going before you just start adding more stuff to the plate." We're in a situation now where all these baby boomers have businesses and want to sell, want to get out of the business, and they feel like their retirement plan is to sell their business for lots of money. So I just talked to one recently, the one that I was looking at the time, and it was a smaller operation. But as I got into it, I'm like, man, this is just like my other two acquisitions, where I would be buying a job.
Mm.
So I'm gonna I would be buying a business that's run by somebody in their 70s who works there full time and has like 2 part-time, 3 part-time employees. And it's a lifestyle business where they just make enough money so that they can live their lifestyle that they want to live. And they show up every day and do the work. So, I've made the decision to back off on that for a moment, get all of our processes and procedures in place. We're in the process right now of moving from separate CRM systems onto one, so that we can then have that process into place so that when we do add an additional location, we're able to be plug and play and go in and say, okay, here's the platform that we're putting in. Hopefully moving people from one store to the other to be able to help out. And at that point, it's a little bit of like, do I want to buy another location or do I just want to open one? Because the company I was looking at too, he owned the property, but he didn't want to sell it to me. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna buy something, right? I'm gonna buy your name basically, and sign up for a lease on your property. And what's stopping me from just opening a carpet store like next door? And buying a piece of land and just coming in and starting fresh. And so if I do acquire another one, it's going to be in a strategic location with staff in place, in order to hit the ground running and be able to continue on, and with a buyout, or a longer earnout, to help that transition as well.
No, that definitely makes sense. And I feel you've already crossed the scariest bridge of being a business owner, right? Like you bought the business, but now you've already got it up and running. You've scaled it. Now it's like, okay, before you do continue to scale, make sure that foundation is, cemented and solid, like you're saying, with consolidating everything to like SOP set and one CRM. Because I think that now all of a sudden, if you open another location, it's not as scary because now it's just plug and play, regardless of where you go, whether it's someone's established business or you're opening a new location, right? The only difference is basically just that startup phase, of just getting everyone knowing that you're there. But besides that, I mean, you already got that handled.
Yeah, no, to a certain extent, and I don't want to fool anyone into thinking that it's just rainbows and cherries, right? I still am, every day working on bids, talking to my team, answering customers' questions. I'm still spending the majority of my time working in my business, and have a role that I play. I'm working towards trying to bring additional people on to scale it. When you do buy a business, it comes with debt, and the debt that I have is a significant amount. And if we didn't have that, we would have a few more employees to help out, et cetera. So right now, it's really how can we scale that up? How our next uh, hires, are we have a salesperson who's retiring after like 35 years. And so I'm going to bring on a couple of different salespeople, to try to help escalate, and to accelerate our growth. But I'm not in the CEO role yet, and we've got a lot more growing to do, and I need to add a lot more positions before I can get to that point. So bringing on some salespeople, and then eventually in the next 6 to 18 months, trying to build out my leadership team, and really, instead of outsourcing all of my marketing and sales training, et cetera, trying to bring that in house, where I have peers that are my equals that can help grow the business further.
No, definitely. I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, just because you're buying a business doesn't mean it's, a lot easier than starting a business fresh, right?
Yeah.
If you start a business, you have your startup costs. If you buy a business, you buy it with debt, and you're investing into something that's already, a running business. So it typically is a little bit more expensive, or it can be more expensive, to buy someone out, because you have the customer base and everything like that. But it's one of those things where you're taking a lifestyle business, like you said, and transforming it into a business that you can be that, behind the scenes, like CEO style, and running a bigger operation. But again, it's just different starting points. But, as an entrepreneur, it's never sunshine and rainbows, right? It's at different levels. There's just bigger problems, right? And as a CEO, as a president, just a business owner, it doesn't matter. You're just going to face the problems at your level, and as you continue to grow, it doesn't get easier. Your leadership will take some of those problems, but the problems that get to you are just, it's like one problem might, be hair pulling, and, like, man, so I definitely agree with you. And I acknowledge that as well. So, with you, in your future growth though, I know you mentioned like your next location and stuff. Are you trying to stay in the same industry? Is that a goal of yours?
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to venture out too far. It definitely be in the home services industry. What we've also thought about is, how do we add other complementary services to flooring? The customer's already coming in. A lot of times they're doing other things within their home that's causing them to want to switch out their floors. A lot of flooring companies out there are like flooring and paint stores, or flooring and cabinet companies, or whatever the case might be. So that might be something that we do as well. But right now I'm trying to just put my blinders on, right, and just stay as focused as I can, so that we can get good at the things that we need to do, that we can get those processes and procedures in place and scale. Because anything that's going to distract me from that goal is just going to distract my team as well. And until we can figure everything out and have every process in place and have things rolling, which we're starting to in certain areas, nothing else matters. And over the course of time, opportunities are going to pop up, right? That people know what you're doing in a market. And so, other store owners I've spoken to, and they know if they want to have a conversation, I'm open to it, and see where it goes from there. But I'm not chomping at the bit. My wife is not extremely excited about taking on more debt. And it's a scary proposition, right? Because if you don't make the debt payments, they come and take your house.
No, it can be a scary game, but I think you do have the right mindset in it, right? Because as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, you mentioned this earlier, that shiny object syndrome, right? And nowadays, at least from what I've seen, is someone that says they're a serial entrepreneur, or someone that wants just the title of serial entrepreneur, they're doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it's like they're giving their attention to all these different industries, right? And it's just for them to diversify fast, versus like what you're doing. It's like, okay, well, I'm in this industry, whether it's adding another location or adding another service or adding something that can complement my original business, and building, basically other businesses, or buying other businesses that can aid my already portfolio, right? And that's a mindset that people don't really have or really take into consideration. Because for you, it's like if you do acquire another business, let's say, right, and it's maybe not flooring, but something that complements flooring or home-based services,
Yep.
right? You can sell a package or a referral program to your other business, and vice versa,
Yes.
right? And so now you're only growing stronger in your overall sale. Whereas someone else that may just have one flooring location and then they have a restaurant and then they have whatever, like you are going to outperform them because your 100% focus is literally in the home service business where their 10% is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, not a lot of our customers, but about 40% of our customers are either like developers, general contractors, home builders, et cetera. So if we add cabinets, for instance, then, when I'm going and doing multifamily 264 unit ground up apartment building, I can not only bid on the flooring, but now I can bid on the cabinets as well. Right. And, we see it a lot with, there's one large national company out there that likes to sell stuff that colors walls. And they also sell flooring. And so they will change their pricing around so that their flooring bid looks extremely low and they get it, but all their margin might be on the stuff that colors walls. And so then you start playing some interesting games with strategies on how to win things, et cetera.
No, definitely. And that's a whole different ball game too when you're able to actually do that and have those, different aspects to just move the numbers around. You still get the same amount to a degree. It's just what does the invoice say each thing costs, right?
Right, correct.
The
Yep.
total cost is still the total cost.
Total cost is total cost, but you can adjust it to where you don't have as much competition. Have your higher margin wherever you don't have as much competition, and your lower margin where there's lots of competition.
Exactly. So going into that, actually, I want to talk about, we had talked about before this, having a victim and a victor mindset. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I have always, not always, but for a long time, I always saw like, why are people being this way? Why is the world happening this way? So, growing up, I grew up in a staunchly Southern Baptist home. My dad was a Baptist ordained preacher, et cetera. 18 years of my life. My senior year in high school, my dad came out of the closet. And he, sat us down and said, "Hey, I've known this all my life, but I've kind of been hiding, et cetera." And at that moment, the church turned their back on him, and I started becoming like, became a victim of like, why do they do this? Why do they, why is this happening? And everything kind of became why is everybody out to do this to me? Why, I became a victim, and even as I worked in the corporate world, people would get passed over. I get passed over for promotions that I felt like I deserved, and it was always, I was always the victim. I felt like, and oddly enough, after my dad passed away, I decided to shift that mindset into figuring out, I'm the only one in control of anything, right? So I'm the only one that can control how what I do, how I react to things, et cetera. 4 years ago when I purchased my companies, I was probably 300 pounds, overweight, drank, not a lot, but drank some, and, enjoyed myself. But, really over the last 2 or 3 years, I've made the mindset of, if I can work on myself and win the next conversation that I have, win the next decision that I have, win the reaction, then it's going to change my life. So, when in 2020 I purchased the company in February, in October, one of our warehouses burnt to the ground. And I really didn't react. I wasn't there when it happened. I was at home. I just want to make sure my employees that were there were okay, which they were. And my team was like, "Man, what? You were so calm. Like you have $1 million burning to the ground, right? And you're just calm. I'm like, what am I going to do about it? I'm not gonna grab a fire hose and run in and try to do anything." Shortly thereafter, when I purchased my company, I bought it as a stock purchase, which when you buy your company as a stock purchase, you assume the liability of everything that has occurred in that business before you took over. So I assumed every liability and responsibility for that company for 30 years prior to me owning it. Well, so February 21, we got sued for a job prior to my time. The prior owner did not disclose it. She knew about it. She didn't disclose it, and she had actually passed away 6 months after I purchased the company. And as that happened, I was back in that victim mentality, right? I'm like, man, this guy's suing me for $400,000. What am I going to do? He's going to win. He won't take my settlement. Blah blah blah. And it wasn't until he and I were having a conversation, and I had other conversations of like, let him say whatever he wants. I get to decide how I react. And so it was really in that moment when he was going off, and telling us what a poor job we did and how he's going to take me to the cleaners and he's going to bankrupt me and blah, 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 that I just, let him continue to talk and didn't react. And when he was done, simply said, okay, can we move on now? Can we figure out a way to make this successful for both of us? And decided how I was going to allow that situation to play out on my side. That it completely flipped the script. We settled out of court. He's given me over $1 million worth of business since that point in time. And he's a good friend. And so changing that mentality, it has changed who I am today. And simply too, I mean, we obviously both know Trevor very well, and I'm on a mission of doing at least a 5K outside every single day. I'm on 283, and now I'm doing 5 miles a day.
Hey, nice.
Yeah, here in Ohio, which in the winter it was not fun. It's like 28 degrees outside, wind chill of like -10, and there I am outside walking around and 4 o'clock in the morning. But having that mentality allows for me to decide what's going to happen, right? Like the world is going to try to test you, or the devil's going to try to test you in every single way possible. And as you say, what I found is, as the victor mentality of, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. All that matters is how I'm going to react, what my decision is going to be, and how much respect I'm going to have for myself and what I do moving forward.
No, that's awesome. I mean, that's a great mentality to have and a great perspective to have. It's one of those things where it's almost like if you can't do anything about it right this second, and there's nothing you can physically do, like you can't put out the fire. And even if you did put out the fire, it's like, okay, it already happened.
Yeah.
So it's like, why stress about it? Just cross the next bridge, right? Focus on the next task, right?
Yep.
It's easy to say, and it's definitely easy to say. It's an easy concept to understand, but it's definitely not easy in the moment all the time.
Absolutely.
But it's something that I'm sure that you've experienced where it's as you do it more and more, it gets easier and easier just to realize that your emotional reaction to it is all out of your control. And it's almost a skill that you've built up, I'm sure, right?
It is, and it's like a muscle, right? You own gyms, and every day people go and work out, and you got to work out your mind as well, and how you react to it. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and one of the things that they were talking about was deciding when to lose. And I think that's part of the victor mentality too, is like, it's okay to decide to lose, right? Like, it sucks to lose, but when you decide that you're going to lose on purpose, you're actually kind of winning, right? And what I mean by that is, you don't have to win every argument. You can decide to lose the argument. And in deciding to lose that argument, most of the time the other person is going to be so surprised that you just let them, you decided to let them win, that you're going to end up getting your way anyway, or at least a portion of that anyway. And if you can let somebody else win some and you win some, then everybody walks away happy.
No, definitely. I mean, that goes exactly with the conversation you were having, with that gentleman who's now a friend. It's like you could have met him at his energy and you guys could have had a scream fest, yelling at each other and stuff. But when you all of a sudden just took that bow out of the argument and been like, okay, I get it. I understand you're upset, but like, how do we move forward from here? Like, how can we both do this? And all of a sudden it does stent them in their steps. And they're just like, wait, I was waiting for you to yell back. Like, and they're like, well, I guess if we just, all of a sudden now they drop down to your level or slowly come down to your level, and it changes the whole conversation. So I think that, deciding to lose in that manner actually can be a very powerful skill when you know when to do it and how to do it, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. I mean, like I said, nobody likes to lose. But when you make the decision, you're actually winning because it's your decision on what you're doing.
Yeah, it's like reverse psychology to a degree.
Absolutely. Yep.
So one question I like to ask, before we start to wrap things up, let's say all your work in like the corporate field and all your businesses, all those hypothetically are gone, right? What is one message that you would like to leave to someone that wants to become an entrepreneur, or whether it's acquiring a business or starting a business? What would that one message from your lessons learned be?
Just sounds cliche and Nike's already coined it, but just do it. Like take an action. If you have an idea, if you have a thought, take the first logical step, even if you don't know what step 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 is going to be. If you take the first step, faith, logic, the world, the universe, whatever is going to lead you to what step 2 is and what step 3 is. So, if you just make the first decision and take action, and then when you get to the next one, take the next most logical, step, and you continue to do that, you're going to be successful. It's when you try to take step 5 before you take step 3, or you try to help other people, and try to get them to do something before you're doing it. Like you have to start small and just take one step and then the next, I guess.
No, that's actually really powerful. That's in Ohio. Is there like snowstorms or anything?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so like it's almost like if you're in a snowstorm, right? What I'm taking from that is like you can't see a mile ahead, right? But you could see your foot on the next step, right? And
Absolutely.
then and so forth, right? And all of a sudden, if you're gonna hit a curb, it's like, okay, don't take that step, turn, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's entrepreneurship in a nutshell for sure. I agree with that. That's awesome. That's powerful. So where can people connect with you? Whether it's just to connect and get more advice as a business owner, or with your businesses in general.
Yep. So I'm on Facebook, Jeremy Johnston, as well as the Gram and LinkedIn. My email is jeremy@creativeflooringohio.com. Feel free to reach out. I love helping people and sharing perspective and helping anybody in any way I can.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Jeremy. And guys, make sure that you guys share the show, leave that review, and like always, we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Devan.